Howdy, wild cards. Welcome to our Thursday Savage Universe show, where we highlight the best in the licensee category for Savage Worlds. So everybody who's an ace or a swag or a fan licensee can come on the show, and we'll show off their wares. So today we are getting mythological with Jim Davenport, founder of Dragon Lair Gaming. So welcome, Jim.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris.
Tell us before we get to the Royal Society of Mythology, which is the project that is currently funded on Kickstarter, and I'll get that link up here in a second. Tell me, how did you get into gaming? What was your origin story of the original OG getting into rolling some dice and playing some games?
So probably seventh grade, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, playing with my brother, who was 3.5 years older than I was, and one of his peers. So starting out as a DM for guys 3 years older than you was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, I was hooked. Then
Did he make you play the cleric for his group? Is that how it happened?
Well, they rarely ran things. I would be, I would game master for them and just hunt through that DMG to find something new and interesting. And things got kind of Monty Hall at times, but I eventually honed my skills and went on as my own group and Top Secret and Game of World and
nice.
Car Wars and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Oh, good. So, yeah, Steve Jackson games. Oh my God, good stuff. Good stuff. So, what was your first exposure to Savage Worlds?
So, my gaming group, my home group, had been playing, D&D forever. 3.5. We tried 4, didn't like it. Went back to 3.5. And basically, we needed a system that everybody could understand easily, because there was some degree of hey, it's the evening, long work day, I don't want to have to remember a whole lot, tell me what to roll. And I got involved with Margaret Weiss Productions for the whole Serenity RPG. So I got involved in that, and so that was a new system that had certainly some bones in it that were a similar shape to Savage Worlds. But then we came across Savage Worlds and tried it, and it's been our home group rule set of choice for 15 years now. So we play practically everything in it.
A nice black hole, like a gravity well. Like once you get near it, it's like, oh, this is comfortable. Let's just stay here. So
yeah, I mean, we'll play a little something. We played one Blades in the Dark campaign, and I've run like Fast Go, Stewpot. I've done little one shots of other stuff, but if it's a campaign, it's definitely Savage Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, like once you find it, it's good stuff. So we got a really cool little video for your campaign. So I'm gonna run the campaign video now to kind of introduce what the Royal Society of Mythology is. So let's get that going.
What if every legend you heard as a child was true? Dragons hidden in mountain caves, fairy rings in moonlit glades, fountains granting eternal youth, and monsters stalking shadowy forests. Every culture tells stories of fantastic wonders and horrifying beasts, dismissed by skeptics as superstition or madness. Today, almost no one believes these myths were ever real. Almost no one. You are globe-trotting adventurers working secretly for the Royal Society of Mythology, an elite organization dedicated to uncovering the truth behind the world's greatest legends. Your job: hunt down these mysteries, follow obscure clues, and confront the interested parties, both sinister and strangely benevolent. Bring back proof, blood samples, enchanted leaves, lost teeth, shimmering scales, and if you're lucky, a living specimen or two. Return to the Society's sprawling London mansion, where the truth is quietly filed away, documented, and hidden from prying eyes. Maybe someday you'll discover the greatest secret of all: what's really behind the myths.
They just do a great job with that.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So what was the inspiration for this game?
I think it was watching, Indiana Jones and watching, The Librarian and these different folks and shows and things. and I liked that feel, but I wanted to do something different. So I switched from focusing on these ancient lost objects to say, well, what if it was the mythological creatures and plants that you were going after? That just opened a whole new side of things.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a nice spin. It's a nice spin, and it also gives you more than just like go collect something, right, or fight off other humans for it. Like,
Right.
what if what you want to bring back it doesn't want to be brought back?
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the main challenges they're going to have to deal with is, you might find some are benevolent, you might find some are hostile but intelligent. So you can talk to them, but they're not about to let you, draw their blood or anything. So negotiation and, using all sorts of different skills at play is important. So not just, outrunning the giant boulder or being able to shoot the bad guy.
Nice, nice. Well, so this is link is in the chat. It's up on Kickstarter. Let's bring up the page right now so we can show it off. Yeah, congratulations, guys! You are 10 times funded. The goal is just $100, and you guys are over 1,000. So that is awesome. And the Mike Lafferty of Painting Go Games is your publishing partner on this, and like he's great. There you have them on the show a bunch, and so the never fails to deliver, which is excellent. So the yeah, let me just go through your campaign page. I love the bear with horns. Like I almost want a plushie of that. And
The Ozark Howler. I started looking on Etsy, and there's a variety of artists who have all kind of thought of the same thing to say, well, what if you found a journal where somebody scientific, Stephen Maturin from Master and Commander out exploring the unknown and sketching creatures and their anatomy and making notes about their habits and that sort of thing. And there's different artists that sort of hit on this same thing, but this guy who goes under the name Boglebear had done this Ozark Howler and the Wendigo that's part of the other book. Had done both of those, so I was able to come to an agreement with him for the rights to use some of his artwork for that.
Nice, that's so good. The no, it's a really nice mix. Like it's not all just vertebrates.
Right.
You run across this. This is yeah. This is definitely one that if you were in the forest, you don't wipe with one of these. Make sure that you don't have to count the leaves or anything. Just stay away.
Yeah, it's giving you plenty of signals on that count. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Yeah, I love Dean Spencer stuff. His stuff's really great.
Oh yeah, and the guy who did the pre-gens for me, Stefano Marinetti, I've worked with him on at least 3 or 4 of my books. I just love his stuff. I'm really over wordy and descriptive sometimes, when I'm trying to communicate to an artist. But I'll give him a big paragraph of everything, even sort of the emotional feel behind a character or, what symbolism I'm trying to do. And he just knocks it out of the park every time. He's great to work with.
Yeah, folks, publishing is a supremely collaborative effort. I mean, there is as much as you'd like to do it all yourself to save on some of the budget stuff. There's so many different skills involved, and so it's great you guys put in the effort to go find good art and bring it into your product. So tell me I really like the previews we're seeing, but there are different kind of factions in the world that are interesting. So why don't you give us a brief kind of a summary of who are the Phoenix Group, the Conclave, the Order, the other conspiracy theorists? Like what's going on besides the PCs in this world?
So you've got the Royal Society, and their goal is to discover this information, keep it from getting out into the public, so sort of continue to protect the myths. But they really want to collect this information for their own purposes. Exactly, what those are, you may discover during a campaign. But the other groups are more, we're born from, well, who would take what other takes? Well, there might be a corporation who just wants to harvest, like a Jurassic Park sequel. They just want to harvest the DNA and figure out what they can make from the sort of the magical properties of these creatures that can turn you to stone, or plants that can heal you from anything. And there's ones that are just conspiracy people that are dedicated to exposing what they feel are, the hidden truths, which are more real than, people give them credit for. And these groups interplay. So the Royal Society, Royal Society of Mythology has a few key individuals sort of back in the home base, and one of them is called the Spider. And the Spider's job is to squelch or obfuscate anything that makes it to the internet about some
Nice.
of these targets. So they'll just flood the zone with all sorts of crazy things, putting up obviously fake Yeti tracks and
Yeah.
whatever they need to do just to make sure that the conspiracy people are considered to be nuts and not given any credence. So
That's
they've been,
fantastic. I love that.
yeah, I mean, they've been around since 1877. So the internet definitely made life harder, but they've recruited some top talent to try to
Top
continue the
men.
mission. Top men, yes. Get
The
right on this.
right? That's really kind of smart, because I think one of the challenges of modern settings, right, is like, what about the internet? What about having cell phones, right? And like cell phones kind of kill a lot of the horror tropes and like the common
Right.
language of like horror films, because if the person can just dial 911 and send a pen to law enforcement the second they feel threatened, the movie's a lot shorter. So
Right.
often in more modern settings, you got to find an excuse why those things aren't at play or they don't work. Well, I mean, similarly in games where you want to introduce weirdness, there's the whole like, well, why isn't this common knowledge? Why is it seeming to be fringe? If it's real, where's the Sasquatch with the TikTok channel who's made a 500,000 followers or whatever? It's like the
Right.
So I like that there is there is an in-game explanation for why the hidden is still at least obfuscated, if not
Yeah, and
um,
I mean, there's a much bigger story at play, which is beyond the Royal Society of Mythology, but through their actions, the PCs can sort of discover this larger aspect. I mean, if you think about it, these myths in most cases are hundreds or thousands of years old since people really gave them any credit. Some people, for Sasquatch or some other things, might consider that they're still having sightings, or Loch Ness or something. But a lot of the stuff has been seen to have been gone and fallen into the realm of fictional for a long, long time. And if you go from the premise that these things were all real, well, what happened? And if these things
yeah.
are magical and there was magic, what happened? And, so, the only thing the RSM understands so far is that there's something that they call the veil, which seems to thwart electronics and different things in a fairly intelligent way. So you might have a lost island that, despite however many satellites we have up there now, it's never seen. Or people can travel near an area, and for some reason nobody just goes to that part of the forest, and they don't know why. And for the RSM expeditionaries, they go there and, okay, well, their iPad doesn't work anymore and their cell phone doesn't work, so they have to rely on some old school tech themselves. Older style cameras, different ways to try to record things, and deal with some of these mythological, uh, plants and creatures and things, sort of on their own terms.
That's awesome. So I mean, the plus levels are like $5 and $7, so very inexpensive to get in on this. What are folks getting? How beefy for? It's not a whole lot. So how big is the book that you guys are giving on this project?
So the Royal Society of Mythology is a mini setting, so it's 34 pages, and you've got a couple new hindrances there. You've got the factions. You've got seven, I believe, seven full multi-page, like 2 or 3 page adventures with art and detailed opponents and multiple. It's kind of a beefy one-shots. So you've got multiple scenes to get through and multiple stages to go through. There's the whole background of the Royal Society. There's a GM section talking about, what are some of the secrets of the Royal Society. You get to you get some idea of who you're going to encounter at the Royal Society, because there's the public face of it, which is, it's a small sort of footnote fund in the royal budget that was, Queen Victoria gave them a stipend that's never been removed. And so anybody that's just a fan of mythology and, love the stories and everything could be a member of this society, and they go to a dinner once a month, and, amazing chefs from around the world are brought in because over, since 1877, they've amassed quite an endowment. So they're doing very well, and they can fund the expeditions very well. But there's a whole public face that just know it as, this is the dinners, and there's a really cool library, a lot of artifacts, and you can sort of geek out with your other mythology lovers. But then behind the scenes, there's an inner circle that is intent on what they're really trying to do, and they're the ones that set up um, they set up the expeditions, and that sort of have a whole backroom part of the society that are pursuing their own ends.
And that's fantastic. That's a lot of lore packed into a kind of a 30-page supplement. But then again, it's super cheap to get into. So if this takes off and does really well, are you hoping to kind of add to the line, do more supplements? What's your future plans at this point for this property?
Yeah, I think it does well as a mini setting because, if you're dealing with sort of modern arcana, there's a whole bunch of the worlds you don't have to describe. So you don't have to spend as much time as you might in like a full setting detailing out all that other stuff. You can sort of depend on that. You can depend on what technology is available and, how most things work. So I think the path forward, if it continues to be successful like this, is putting out new myth hunts and, delving into interesting mythologies around the world, and either giving people sort of these beefy one sheets at a nice, inexpensive price, or, doing more of a connected series of them that'll help you, sort of a mini plot point sort of thing that helps you get into some more of the RSM secrets. I think that's the direction that I want to take it once this has gone out. And since we've had the funding level that we have, you're getting the mini setting itself, the 34-page book, and then there's also a second book, the Wendigo of Ione, and that's another myth hunt, but it also includes 6 pre-gens, which we saw the art for earlier, and they're sort of they're archetypes of the different roles in the expedition. Like one of the roles is cleaner, and their whole point is, okay, let's make sure that there's no evidence that we were here. There's no, we don't inadvertently provide evidence to other people that this, mythical creature existed. There's security, there's rivals, there's local authorities, there's all sorts of people that, might get in the way that you have to deal with, in a non-lethal way. And, some of your rivals might, make it lethal. There's occultists who deal with the magical aspects, and really delving into the lore to try to help you solve the clues and the puzzles that come along the way to figuring out where this thing is and what exactly it is, and how close was the myth to the reality of the creature. So there's 6 different roles and full pre-gens with full body art in there, in with that additional myth hunt. So the 2 of them together, you're pretty much ready to go.
Well, and that's fantastic. And so the 2 different levels on Kickstarter, for if you just need the PDFs, it's only $5 for all of this goodness. I mean, you could run an entire campaign for years on the kind of the concept. So that's a pretty good value there. And then if you would like to get the POD at cost through DriveThruRPG to actually get it printed out in physical form, it's just $7. And then all you have to do is then pay the POD cost. So those are fantastic pricing on that. So tell us what's next for you. If you have anything you want to hint at on like another future project, doesn't have to be Savage Worlds. Anything else that you're currently working on, or is the Society of Mythology kind of camped in your brain for the time being?
So what I spend most of my time doing is writing for Knights of the Dinner Table magazine.
Nice.
And they actually gave me my start. So if I rewind for a second, the very first thing I tried to get published, I had just started reading their magazine, and of course loved the comic, and saw that there were these, they also printed articles with it. So I just took a shot, and I had started watching Firefly and just loved it.
Mhm.
And so I wrote up an article. Everything I needed to learn, I learned from Firefly, and I think I identified 20 some different points from the show that really apply to how you should run an RPG and how to make it successful, that apply even beyond a space cowboy sort of a thing. And so they published that in their 100th issue, and then that got noticed by Margaret Weiss Productions, who bought it from me because they were going to do the Serenity RPG. Then they hired me to do the GM chapter of the Serenity RPG, and then I did Battlestar Galactica and a bunch of stuff for them. But I've always been
Oh, so
still
good.
writing.
You've been writing all my favorite RPG conversions of my favorite shows, sir. This is
It's the 2000s were a lot of fun working with them and getting to work with those licensed properties. And I wrote the Gen Con adventure for Serenity for the year it premiered, 2005.
fun.
And one of the Battlestar Galactica adventures and things. But anyway, so I kept writing with Knights of the Dinner Table, and they had a movie reviewer who basically his shtick was, I'm going to take some geek movie and trash it. I'm going to tell you why this thing is, a terrible, terrible thing. And he just wanted to be trying to be provocative. And he got a lot of response of people, saying, oh, you're crazy or whatever. And
rage clicks.
Rage clicks, yeah. He left at some point. He stopped doing it. So they were trying to figure out, well, we still want somebody dealing with movies. So I proposed doing a column called Gaming the Movies, which I would look at a movie or a TV show property and say, okay, how would I run a game and really get the feel of this? And I just started out by writing a few articles as a test to let them see what I was talking about. I think I did Buckaroo Banzai and Mystery Men and Indiana Jones, and I don't know, I have a couple different other ones, and they liked it. So I think the last one I did was my 88th column for that. So that's what I usually am doing when I'm writing, and that feeds into probably my next project, because they have kindly allowed the copyright on all this stuff to revert to me 6 months after publication. So they love it in their magazine, but after that it doesn't do them a lot of good. So they're let me have it. So I published a version of that called GM Gems Volume 1 a year or two ago. And that was just a start of some of my non-movie related articles I've written for them, including that original Firefly one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And there's 2 or 3 more books of that. There's, a few books I could put out of the Gaming the Movie articles. So I think we're going to go back, and when I do that, I go and revise and update the articles itself, source my own art and things like that. And then, so I think that's probably going to be one of my next collections, is either these GM advice articles or the Gaming the Movie series.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay, so between the 2 Space Cowboys games that you wrote, Firefly and Battlestar Galactica, the which one did you think is more interesting narratively, and which one is more interesting crunch-wise?
Well, I think and I'll admit, I'm a fluff over crunch person. I'm a more narrative. That's why I really love Savage Worlds, because it doesn't take me much to run the system and know the rules and whatever, and it doesn't get in my way too much. But of the Serenity RPG was fun, but there were parts of it that were not smooth at the table, that they needed to work out. And the Battlestar Galactica was an iteration on that. Cortex Plus was an iteration on that, and so they continued to refine some of these things. And of course, all game design these days is a combination of, well, I really like the Benny concept from Savage Worlds, but I really like this other thing from Fate, and what if we mash this together? And so I think they just kept experimenting, and even to the Firefly RPG, once they finally got access to the TV show licensing, because that was when we did Serenity RPG, we weren't allowed to reference anything that was only in the show. So you could have a write-up of Malcolm Reynolds, because he was in the movie, but you couldn't reference anything he did in the show. So you couldn't talk about her name, just Saffron. You couldn't have Saffron in there because she wasn't in the movie. Well, eventually they got the license to Firefly, so they put the Firefly RPG out. By that point, I was in dealing with Savage Worlds and off doing other things. But I assume that they've just refined their approach to that system over time. I did like the one they did on Leverage, which was a fun heist show, and how they did things that were a little more like Blades in the Dark. So you're not stuck there. Let's do 3 hours of planning, and it immediately goes out the window.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, let's flashback and say, well, how did I get past that? Well, let's figure out how you did it. And so I think that was always some good inspirational stuff that made it a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fitting that you ended up with Savage Worlds too, right? Because I think your tastes are definitely good as far as like media that is you want to bring to the RPG table, right? I mean, all the kind of
Right.
shows are just like, oh, this is actually an RPG show, and like, I mean, Serenity is one of those ones where you could just like you can pick archetypes for the characters who are on that ship,
Exactly.
and it just fits. And then there's some surprising ones like everyone's like Lord of the Rings, right? But it's like, tell me, what's Gandalf's character sheet look like? What spells does he have, right? Like it's the way fantasy RPGs have gone is very different kinds of wizards than Lord of the Rings. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings; it's great, inspiration, but it's not really written as a in some ways as an RPG. So
right, it's a fable. It's you can really tell when you're watching usually TV shows, because they're episodic, which is helpful in something that you might turn into a game. But you can tell the ones that say, okay, yeah, these are archetypal roles and not just unique characters that, well, I can't play this unless I'm playing that character. It's like, okay, well, some people might enjoy that, but I pretty much say, unless you can make your own characters in the thing and feel like you're still playing it, it's not, not something that really works. But with the game and the movies, I tried to go all over the place, and I've gotten some great suggestions from my wife saying, well, why don't you try this one, or why don't you try that? So I did a game in the movies on a British cozy mystery show called Rosemary and Thyme, and it's like, okay, it's cozy mystery tropes, and okay, well, what is it about their setup that makes it specific and interesting? And so that was an interesting challenge to get past some of the more traditional genres you might run into. So yeah, in those 88 columns, there's some oddballs in there.
that's awesome. Well, and I mean, hey, the cozy mystery is like I think it was a Humblewood or something like that. There's a great little RPG that kind of it kind of leans into those. And I know for SWAT, I've got an adventure called Mordor she wrote, which is a a cozy little mystery in Mordor instead. And so I mean, I love your ideas, because I'm like, these are things I want to play with too, right? There's so many things where like, well, how would you bring the feel of that show? And that's kind of why I poked at Serenity and Battlestar Galactica, because they're both space, right? But they're so different in tone and in what your characters would be doing in those shows, right? Like, Battlestar Galactica, you are probably getting orders in a hierarchy, and it's a everything is like there is a clock on humanity's life, and there's these big bads that are after you. But in Serenity, you're kind of rogues. You're trying to like hide from authority. You aren't in the authority. There isn't. I mean, until they bring in like the zombie space plague. But otherwise, like it's I mean, I guess it's the zombie space plague versus like robot space plague. But
right,
there's
you
just,
have an existential issue that is sort of the mega plot that goes on. So part of it is, well, if I don't like the mega plot and I just love their day to day, okay, great. What's the day to day? So if you look at one of my columns, I'll do a summary of what it is. So people really aren't familiar with the subject material. I give them a quick synopsis of, well, it's about these sort of characters and they're doing these sorts of things. And then I break into, okay, well, how do you game this? And I try to draw out, the 3 or 4 or 5 things that, Battlestar Galactica is really about, yes, it's the survival of humanity, but it's also about what does it mean to be human, and all these questions between the Cylons, the skin jobs, and all these things. So talk about these sort of prime tropes, if you will, and then I'll go ahead and I'll give them an adventure. So a page or two description of, okay, here's an original adventure set in this thing. We're going to assume that your characters like this, and it's just sort of run it through as an example of the tropes, so sort of see it in action. And then I'll have a section for where do you get more inspiration, whether it's other movies or TV shows that are similar, or were there any comics put out about it, or any novels? Are there any soundtracks that are particularly evocative for this, or anything that if somebody wants to dive deep in this and wants to just sort of immerse themselves even more, what they can find. There's actually a section in the columns where I touch on how to run the game from a rules perspective, and this is where being so devoted to Savage Worlds, I think, has probably limited me in some way, because I don't play a whole bunch of different games out there. So, I might look at a particular movie and, okay, it's, you need to run it this sort of way or that sort of way. I'll do some research to see if there's some RPG that's been out specific for that or close to that or something. But if there isn't, I'll just try to say, well, this is clearly got to have gun combat, and it's lethal gun combat. So if you're going to pick a rule system, you've got to be able to, it can't be, too cinematic. You've got to be, gritty, or, this depends so much on human interplay and, people trying to persuade or intimidate each other. You should pick a system that treats that subsystem well, or those sort of conflicts well. So I'll try to figure out, well, the rules should support these sorts of things. And there are many more rules out there than, I know of. If there are some that I've run across, I'll mention them, but, and I try not to just say that, well, Savage Worlds can do everything, but, a lot of times it is the answer.
Well, and I mean, I think the modularity of it welcomes other systems that do the same thing, right? There's quick combat and there's full-on tactical combat where they both handle combat, but with a different flavor, a different use in the game. So like anything that leans into the Ludo narrative non-dissonance. I'm making fun of our Donald. Love you, Donald. But anything that's got where the mechanics and the things you're actually doing in the game evoke the actual feeling of cozy murder mystery, or Battlestar Galactica, which is kind of like, I mean, it's like it's like My Fair Lady, but Eliza Doolittle drops nukes on Professor Higgins.
Right.
That's basically the show. That's the elevator pitch.
I don't think I've heard that elevator pitch, but that must be the one they used.
Right. Yes, the is it the rain in Spain? So it's the nukes on Dukes, whatever. Anyways, but yes,
well, yeah, that flexibility of Savage Worlds. I mean, I'm going to run a demo game, Royal Society of Mythology, not this weekend, but I think next weekend. And I'm just going to use the quick combat, quick encounters, because it'll be theater of the mind. It's not going to be a long drawn out thing, but I want to let people see what is sort of the iconic experiences of one of these expeditions. And Savage Worlds allows me to run those quickly and keep it moving, and it's so flexible. And then the setting rules say, well, I want to tweak it to be more gritty, or I want to tweak it this way or tweak it that way. No one can ever die, or whatever you want to do. It's really, really flexible, and we're probably going to stick with it for as far as we can go.
Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on funding. This is a great Kickstarter. It is currently funded and still open for several more weeks. So folks, get in on the Kickstarter. This is a great new addition to the kind of Dragon Lair gaming line. You guys will remember them from things like Bad Actors, Black Dog Squad. Did you do a Civil War one, Colonel Bull's Body?
Right. Yeah, Savage Adventure, yeah.
Yeah, the Art of Negotiation. I think that won a swag award, maybe.
No, it didn't, but it is a Suede subsystem, awesome. A way that you can run negotiations or interactions, even like trials or things like that, where you have people on on two sides or even three sides of an issue going after each other verbally to try to make points and arguments and do whatever, and it creates it into like a little mini game of it.
Oh, that's
So you
good.
can really put a lot of focus, so it's not just one die roll of persuasion or something. You can draw it out to make it as dramatic as it should be.
See, I love that because I think there is a need in RPGs and a want for social conflict to be as interesting as tactical combat. Right?
Right.
It can take as long. There can be as many options. There can be this sense of back and forth. In a lot of ways, the kind of default we've got from the first generation of RPGs, where it's like it's really only charisma or intimidation, and then you make a roll.
Right.
That's it, right? That's just short. It's not as satisfying as, well, I want to do a desperate attack, or I want to do a wild attack, and I want to add more damage, and then it's back and forth, and there's pennies spent. Like, giving some meat to the narrative of social conflict is fun. It's just fun. Like that, and especially because it allows you to design bigger adventures that aren't just dungeon crawls, right? That do have political intrigue and
Right.
social conflict. So there's more for the characters to do that isn't. I mean, in a way, combat rules, and game rules allow a game master to throw out a concept and then let the players figure it out at the table. Versus if you don't have any structure, any bones around your social conflict stuff, it's a lot of heavy lifting on both the GM and the players to kind of fill that out, right? Like, what happens if the player makes a really good argument to you on why they should win, but then you make them roll the dice and the dice don't match what they say, right? I mean, that's like, well, big questions is if like, well, what if my character is very attractive or persuasive, but Amy as a
But
player,
I'm not, or I just can't think of anything tonight, or right.
100%. Like, that's not. I mean, none of us actually have to kill the guy next to us or the game master when we're in a combat. So why do we have to also be? There should be fun simulation kind of tools for that. So I'm really glad people are kind of filling out that space because there's just still a lot of opportunity there. I mean, I think there's so much work done on crunch from like the war game crowd and the miniatures crowd that don't really have a lot of fluff or no fluff at all in their games. So we inherit all of that work too in RPGs. And then there's a lot of RPGs that are slashing and statting up monsters. So, but we're like the only ones that really have to do the heavy lifting on how do we make talking interesting? How do we make fights interesting and fun? So
yeah. I mean, I think the combat was life or death. So people wanted a system to try to treat it fairly, and let the dice fall where they may, that sort of thing. But social encounters were like, well, you're not going to live or die. It doesn't. We don't have to get that deep into it. But with the art of negotiation, I introduced some resource management, because you're going to go through rounds of this, and you're going to accumulate tokens based on the arguments that you've made. How successful they are. But there's also levels of risk. So if you're just haggling over an apple with the local grocer, the risk level is very low. If you're haggling for your life with the king of the underworld, there's quite a bit more risk at play, and there's multiple levels of what that really means. Like, well, you could lose an argument with the local crime lord, and he could actually force you to do things that you do not want to do. And if you turn out that you say, well, I simply refuse to do those things, well, you pick up the oathbreaker hindrance, and people in that community will realize that, okay, your word is not to be trusted. And so there's some hindrances and some new edges in there that all play into being able to approach those things dramatically. And if you want to be very good at that kind of stuff, you can be very good at that stuff and be the eloquent advocate, or whatever you want to be.
That is awesome. Well, again, folks, the Jim's doing the heavy lifting over here, making some awesome stuff for you guys to go pick up. So check out Dragon Laird Gaming. Oh, what's the website where folks can find? I threw up your blog, but is there where's the best place for them to catch your articles that are coming up on gaming the movies?
So the kenserco.com is the website for Knights of the Dinner Table, and you can get digital copies of the magazines. I think they have a codex there that you can look up, what articles and what issues, that sort of thing. My own website, I haven't updated it in quite a while, but I try to keep a list of all the articles and the issue numbers that they came in, as well as a few. There's some free articles, free gaming the movies examples up there as well. So yeah, I really should go and update that. I'm probably missing quite a few at this point.
Well, that's awesome. One, I'm gonna go dig into these because I'm gonna steal a bunch of your ideas from my own games because
that's the idea.
I really do love, like, to me, being like the only kid. So like, it's not like I just like get RPGs with like siblings or whatever, board games even on demand. Like film and TV that's where a lot of my that would be a really fun game comes from, right? So
yep.
there's just it's not as direct and as easy as folks might think. It's not just like making something feel like Firefly versus Battlestar, or doing kind of like you're a super genius but people are lying, and so you're investigating stuff and trying to figure out all those things it's not very straightforward. It's you might arrive at an elegant solution, kind of like the flashback kind of mechanic has done, but that before it existed, it's not super apparent on wait a minute though, but those are all like authored things, and so things happen because someone wants them to happen. But how does that work at the table where there's the chaos of what the players do? And
I run into properties that I'll think about, like how can I game this, and I'll study it, and I'll get to the conclusion that the only reason this works is because the author has scripted it and woven it just the right way, so that he hits the points that he wants to hit, and he brings you emotionally through it, or whatever, that it would not stand the rigor of a typical gaming group, because they wouldn't go there. There's not enough incentive for them to act like these characters act, because gamers protect their characters and try to optimize solutions and solve things. And
right,
some
100%.
some of these properties, the joy is in the craziness. I mean, that's why I love Fiasco so much, is because you can lean into people making very bad decisions with poor impulse control.
Well, right, and part of like the TV and film too is when the character knows information that the viewers don't. So the actual reveal is a surprise to the viewer, but it's not a surprise to the character, right? And you can't. Technically, you could have players who are willing to compartmentalize their brains so much, but in reality, that's not enjoyable, because who are they performing that reveal for, right? It's not themselves or the game master. So it's not going to happen at the table. Those are some things that are great and shocking as a viewer, but you're like, oh, that wouldn't actually be fun to play, because again, the game master knows what's going on, and then you yourself know, but your character's not going to do it. I mean, yes, there's some great gaming that comes from that, where you as a player know things your character doesn't, you choose. But the big reveals are like, there's no one to see it. Like look at it, unless you're streaming. But otherwise it's like those things don't exist, right? So the big payoffs in gaming are just very different than the big payoffs in film and TV, because
it's a completely different experience. I mean, novel is different from a movie, is different from a TV show, and they excel in different things in different ways, and that's why the same property told in different ones of them is going to feel different. And like, I think I heard they're going to do Harry Potter as an HBO TV series.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the beats of that are going to feel much different than the epic beats of the the movie trailer or the movie series.
Yep. Oh no, 100%, right? And the I think there are definitely products that I found are crappy because not a lot of effort was put into them. But then there are some that, like, there were clearly a lot of effort, clearly a lot of love for and they just miss. And almost all of those, I think, this should have been a novel instead of an RPG adventure. It's like you had a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's not gameable. It is experienced. It's readable, but it's just not a game. Because there's no way unless I think it's similarly when you get players who complain about things being too railroaded. Like open sandbox, I've never found has worked well. Like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. This was not fun. It's like, well, great, you had all the freedom in the world, but similarly, you have to have some structure. There's things that are going on in the world, but it is a very different mindset on. It's a cool idea. How do we make it a game? So I love that you're answering those things with like, how do we take, it is a skill, right? It is not easy. So I'm glad you are tackling it. That's very cool. Whether it's negotiations or like bringing your favorite movie to the screen, or maybe bringing your favorite movie to the game table from the screen.
Right.
Okay, so one question on that: what are you watching? What's your current favorite TV show, movie? What's the book? What's the?
What are we watching? We are watching. We have to keep it
up.
on the notes because like, oh, what's dropping now? We're watching Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple.
Okay.
I got to watch The Rookie. Got to watch my Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, so good.
There's other interesting stuff. Mobland.
I've seen the first 2 episodes and then don't have Paramount Plus. I'm like, I'm missing out. But
that is the bomb, literally.
Good. Okay.
And
yeah,
my
Pierce
wife
the accent is thick in that one. He goes thick Irish. So.
He's in it, and just anything Tom Hardy does. And my wife started watching Yellowstone, which when I would sit with her, it's like, okay, yeah, this is enjoyable, but I have some writing to do. I choose not to get sucked into this, but then we've watched Landman, Lioness.
Lioness is great.
Just about any property he does is just, the writing is incredible.
Very Shakespearean. I mean, there's the Yellowstone one, like on the ranch. It's like, oh my God, this is like King Lear on a ranch kind of thing, and or Macbeth kind of mixed in together. Yeah. I mean,
he really imbues the characters with that kind of, almost epic resonance.
Right? Epic, and then just deeply flawed, and just
right.
There's.
You can see they're a train wreck, and they're they're not going to end well, but I mean, that's why I got sucked into things like The Shield or Breaking Bad or something like that. That it's not only such a captivating character, even if they're going down the drain, but for me, it's also they really hook me with that. I'm waiting for the moment where, for just once, they make the good decision,
right?
where they show the tiny bit of humanity. They show, Walter White does the thing that saves Jesse's life when it's counterproductive to whatever he's trying to do. Those little you go show somebody that's so bad, it makes me root for those moments.
Oh yeah. The Handmaid's Tale is wrapping up this season, and there's like one episode left, and like the penultimate episode aired, and there was a moment of that. There's 2 different characters they're doing the same thing. They're boarding an airplane, but one of them, it is a redemptive moment because he knows what he's doing, and the other one has been given every choice to not be a Nazi douchebag, and he's chosen to do the Nazi douchebag thing like consistently, and it's just like so the one guy knows that he's basically going to his death and redemption, and the other guy doesn't know what's waiting for him. He thinks he's going to go off to plan the evilness, right? And I'm just like, oh, great writing to do the exact same little stutter step when they're about to board the plane, and one guy knows that he's going to be ending the evil, and the other guy is like, nope, I'm all in on it. Fine, we accepted it. I'm like, oh, great writing. I mean, like, again, hard to bring to the table, but one of those things where it's interesting to have. Is the horribly, thoroughly evil character going to have any bit of redemption? And what do they pay for that? What's the payment for it? Like, oh, delicious. Right. So.
Oh yeah, the Handmaid's Tale episode was great. We watched that last night. And there was one of the GM articles I wrote was about planning for the ending of your campaign. Okay, great. You're going to start for a campaign. but what's the epic conclusion? What's where is this all going to? With Breaking Bad, they telegraphed the end of that, from the very beginning, that where this was headed, and you weren't sure if that's really where he was going to go or if he was going to take a side route or whatever. But as it went on, you realize more and more. I mean, until you get that, that episode in one of the later seasons when his wife says, don't you dare say you did this for me or for the family. And he turns around and he said, "You're right. I did it for me,
For me,
everything." And I mean, if you don't think about what those at least could be, the chances of you getting there are almost nil, because you're not a writer. You don't get revisions to figure out how to make sure everything, hit the right beats in the right moment and everything. But if you think about it and you think about, well, it's really going to be an epic battle on the top of this mountain, or it's going to be, you know, one of the PCs, not sure which one's going to, going to take the bait, but one of these PCs against a particular nemesis, and how they fight, whether it's in court or in a duel or whatever. You put some of those points out ahead of you. It gives you some guidance about where you take your adventures and sort of nudge people toward that.
Oh, 100%. And I think so. Okay, just this week, Andor finished up, and have you seen that?
I have not seen the new season. We've
Okay,
been
well,
finishing
no
other stuff.
spoilers, but I think it exemplifies the point you just made on. So for me, one of the biggest letdowns of the Star Wars movies 7, 8, and 9 is that it's just clear that even though they were going to be a big budget Disney thing, they didn't sit down and sketch out an arc. Right? They did one movie and then just handed it off to somebody else, and then they took it
different
back.
directors who seem to be working with different scripts, written by different people that only had a vague notion of what the show Bible was.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of wonder if they even read the show Bible at all. Some of the things. Oh, hello, puppers. Oh my God, so cute. Is that a chin?
He's a Tibetan spaniel named Babu, who demands lap time.
Yeah, we will not deny lap time.
No.
But you're thinking like, man, really? They they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these, and they didn't just have a sit down and like sketch out. It was like things like House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. You can see where when they left the book territory, left written down.
Yeah.
So one thing I love about Andor, right, is that we know where it ends, right? We know that it ends with the movie Rogue One, and so that's where it's got to end. And even with what you think would be a downside of like, okay, it's spoiled for everybody. We know who makes it into that movie. We know the entire time Cassian has to live, right? Because he's in the movie. So you can torture him, but you can't kill him. You'd think there'd be a downside, and like they just did a really good job landing that season 2 with all of that, even just knowing all of that. And I think it goes to your point about knowing where the characters need to get to. And obviously this is writing for screen versus a game, but similarly, I think that America writes ago, it is incredibly hard ending a campaign correctly. But I think the first step is to try, right? You're not going to get it unless you roll just amazingly well and everything comes into place, if you don't even think about it. But if you think about what makes sense for these characters, where they've gone, not just the roles for one night, but where their arcs are going, I think that's incredibly powerful to bring to games. And if you are doing a long-term campaign, even just having in your early sessions, like, what is this character's long-term goal? Write down 2 or 3 of them. And then I'm not going to guarantee I'm going to give them to you or going to make them happen. But what would be a satisfying? What does your character think that their midterm and long-term goals are? If you never do it, you're never going to even try. So I think that even just asking the question, in this game, how do we want to? Right? It really is the. Yeah, 100%. I mean, yes.
Yeah, the movie they made off the reality of the rebellion. Yeah.
I got a whole Star Wars rant. Basically though, like what if all the Star Wars movies are essentially a terrorist propaganda film for the jihadis going against the civilized society, and the Empire
Right.
isn't really like that. It's just what they're telling their kids. It's like
Right.
the Jedi's are jihadis, and anyways, it's like, I mean, they fly a lot of planes into a lot of buildings. I'm just saying, like everything, the whole thing is planes into buildings. But the no, I mean, it's one of those things, right? It's like the gaming is an inherently free form art. We don't know where it's ending. It is about the experience of getting there versus where you're going. But that doesn't mean we can't have that in mind, have an ending in mind, have hey guys, let's. I mean, how hard would it be to even just have your characters like, listen, guys, we're getting close to the end of this campaign. Let's start thinking on how we want to land this correctly so that we're all satisfied. Just be mindful of that as we're playing. I mean, that's just a simple little thing, just reminding people. And like, I think that would fundamentally change, a couple sessions, and really could lead to something a little more interesting than.
Yeah, I think for me, getting to the ending is about creating what I think of as resonant hooks. So
good term.
even if you're not thinking about the end of the campaign, but you're just trying to see, how engaged are my players in this? Do they fall in love with an NPC? Maybe not romantically, but there's the street urchin that suddenly they decide we're going to protect that street urchin, and if anything happens to him, there's going to be hell to pay. If anytime you get people to care about the world and the people in the world in some way, I'd say that's a victory. And if you build these up, if you wrong them in a terrible way that they can't write or take revenge on immediately because whoever did it is just too powerful or is gone or whatever, those things sit and fester, and those things can be the building blocks to an epic conclusion. Oh, we finally have a chance to get Dr. Evil, let's go get him. So if you build that together, and then I'm a big fan of collaborating with the players, even at a metagame level, to say, yeah, where do you guys think you're going? And so, well, we really think it's going after the king of this undead land, or we want to destroy this, or we want to do whatever it is. That you can you by working with them, you increase their buy-in into the campaign and the world. And that's why I also I haven't done it very much. I think only when I did a one-shot stew pot thing, which is a lot of everyone around the table is helping to create things on the fly as you go through the this sort of experience. And I really want to use like microscope or one of those sorts of things, and from the beginning co-create with the players what you're going to do. And I don't need very much, but if anybody that contributes something will feel ownership over that something. And I say, okay, well, you talked about the Dwarven Kingdom over here and how, it's a different sort of Dwarven Kingdom. They don't live underground. They live in villages, but they do these or whatever. And I would go back to that player and say, well, tell me more about this. Or you guys run into them, and I'd look to the player and say, what do you think is happening here? Or, continue to have them, be bought into how what the world is. I really want to do that on a campaign scale, which I haven't yet. So I'm interested to find the right sort of session zero tool to use. And I'm not sure if Microscope is it. I need to sort of walk through it. And I listened to the Dice Exploder podcast, which digs into game design elements. So I'm very interested in game design. I just don't want to do it myself a lot. I want to understand it. And they dropped a bunch of hints of different systems that give you a way to co-create, and they focus different ways. I think Microscope breaks, it's like a timeline based. It breaks things into eras, and then you subdivide the eras into into something else. But other things take different angles on how you co-create. So I'm sort of trying to read up through those and see which one I want to use.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. We've hit our hour, folks.
Oh yeah,
Jim,
Designing Problems is a great podcast too.
Yeah. That's JD. So again, a pleasure talking to you, sir. You come on the show anytime. We'll have to dig into some more game design stuff on your next project. But congratulations on the Mythology project funding. It sounds like a really kind of cool adventure, cryptid kind of fun kind of game. And can't beat the price. Less than $10 for what is a clearly well thought out RPG product. So check out Jim's articles. Check out the Kickstarter campaign. And since it's me and not JM today, I'm going to take one brief minute to do a little PEG promo because we got some really cool sales that just dropped today. So the over on Humble Bundle, there is a $25 Deadlands Reloaded bundle. It is the entirety of Deadlands Reloaded for as little as $25. It's a pay what you want Humble Bundle. So you guys can check that out. I'll throw the link. I threw it in the chat way back when. There's the link to the Humble Bundle. And pretty fantastic deal. $25 for 400-ish, 385, I think, dollars in value for, let me see what it says at the bottom. I put it on the graphic. $386. So $386 for as little as $25 on Humble Bundle. Limited time, so go over and check that out if you want to get into some Deadlands. Reloaded is what brought us the original Blood Drive, which was excellent. We brought that back for the Weird West version. And then the 4-point Servitor campaign, the Flood, Last Sons, Stone in a Hard Place, and Good Intentions. Yes, and so taking on the Servitors, and there's 4 big plot point campaigns, and a lot of other fun adventures too. So check out that bundle. And then Foundry BTT is having their 5th anniversary sale, so 20% off everything in the Foundry store. You can go shop there, or everything Foundry BTT on peginc.com is also 20% off, and it's taken off when you check out. So there's a whole list of, and look at all the Foundry stuff we've got. We've got a bunch of stuff for Cord. We've got Deadlands covered, Rifts covered, Pathfinder covered, and then some fun stuff for Holler and Hereafter. So all of those you can save quite a lot on 20% off on those. So if you haven't picked those up, grab that. That's a great sale on BTT. And then for the US folks, everything physical, $100 or more gets free shipping in the United States. That's kind of a thank you for sticking with us during the craziness that is inflation and shipping and oil tankers and gas prices and tariffs and all that craziness. We thought like, hey, let's do something special. Everybody else is complaining. Let's celebrate that you guys are still here. So if you're picking up physical books from Peg Inc. and you're in the lower 48, grab over 100 over, and you get free shipping for a limited time. So those are the cool deals available now from Peg. Just didn't want you guys to miss out, but that's some pretty big savings. And other than that, appreciate you coming on, Jim. Thanks for putting up with me. And JM should be back, and I'm filling in for him today. But this weekend, folks, go out there, play some Savage Worlds, back some Kickstarter campaigns, grab a bundle or two, roll some dice. Hey, get the game designing. You too can go to savageuniverse.com and figure out how to be a fan, a swag, or an ace licensee, and you can bring your favorite movie property to Savage Worlds. Pretty simple. James has done it. I mean, he's a really smart guy, but you can do it too. So I appreciate you guys watching, folks, and we'll leave you with a little We Play Savage Worlds goodness. Take it easy. Thanks again, Jim.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be
We
with you.
play Savage Worlds, whether we're at the table or over the internet. In our role-playing game, fantasy is just the beginning. From the Wild West to the depths of outer space and beyond. Anytime, any place. They're all Savage Worlds.